Hey everybody, welcome to Calvary Family Time, a short midweek video for kids and everyone to remind you that you're not alone and you're a part of something larger than yourselves. We're glad that you are a part of our family. One of the books that I really remember from when I was growing up was a book called The 10 Little Postmen. It was a children's book with pictures that my grandfather used to read to me. And it was really cool because you got to see how a letter that you would write would be taken by a mail carrier and taken to the post office and then put on a bus or a plane or a train and delivered to another post office who was then picked up by another mail carrier and taken to the person to whom I was sending the letter. And that was just really interesting. But the other thing, like I said, was that it was special because my grandfather used to read me that book. Now, this was a long time ago, but you are probably reading books now and having books being read to you that you'll think about in the same way when you grow up. Books that will bring back memories of special times and special relationships. I hope so. That's part of what gives us the joy of reading. I also remember a book that I first read when I became a Christian. Now, this was when I was in college. I was probably 19, 20 years old. It's a book that my brother gave me, actually, called Foundations of the Christian Faith. And it looks really thick, and maybe to you it looks boring because it's got a lot of words and there aren't any pictures in it. But for me, it was really exciting because for the first time, I began to see how everything in the Bible fit together. It was a book that helped me understand God better. And as a result, I look back on that and it gives me great pleasure to remember reading the book. Another book that I remember reading is a book called Desiring God. And this is a book that didn't just teach me about who God was and what I was supposed to believe about him. It taught me how I was to love God with all of my heart. Because God isn't just someone that we need to know about. God is someone who we need to enjoy. And that's what this book taught me. Another book that I remember reading, and this is when I was an adult, but it's called Lord of the Rings. Now, this is a fiction book. It's not a big, thick book about the doctrine of who God is or anything like that. It's a God who actually reveals to us truths about the way the world works through an amazing story. And they've made it into movies and things like that. But as you get older, maybe you want to read Lord of the Rings too, or have someone read it to you. It's a fascinating, amazing story, and it's a book that I really enjoy. Now, another book that I'm hoping to read this summer is a book that lots of people in our church are going to be reading. It's a book called Gentle and Lowly. And your parents maybe are reading this book, or you'll see it lying around, and you know what? Ask them about it. Ask them what it's about. It's about how Jesus helps us when we struggle to obey him, when we struggle living in a world that sometimes hurts and is painful. It's a world where we need comfort from God. And that's what Jesus does. Now, Jesus does lots of things, but in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our suffering, and in the midst of our struggle with sin, Jesus is close to us. He cares about us. And that's what that book's about. So I'm looking forward to reading that this summer. Now, I hope that you love to read as much as I do, but we should never take for granted that we get to read. It's not just that we have to, we get to. There are people all over the world who don't get to read in the same way. Sometimes because they don't have access to books like we do. Sometimes because they don't know how to read. They've never learned, they've never been taught. And we should try wherever we can to be a part of helping someone to learn how to read if they don't know, or helping them to get access to good books if they don't have them. Because, you know, what's really interesting is that that's how God communicates to us, in a book. He could have revealed himself and communicated to us through a YouTube video, through a television program, through a movie, through a podcast, through something like that, but he didn't. Now, we can learn about God in those kinds of ways, but the way that God chose to reveal himself to us is through a book. Over thousands of years, God led different people to write down what he wanted them to say, stories about the way that God's people used to live, stories about things that happened in history, accounts of what God did in the lives of his people, all so that we could know who God is, so that we could understand us and our world better, and we could learn to love God for what he has done for us. Now, I want you to tell me what books you're interested in reading. And you don't have to do it on a video like this or whatever. Come up to me in church on Sunday and tell me, what kind of books are you interested in reading? You can write me a letter, and maybe one of the 10 little postmen can deliver it to my house. Tell me what you like to read, because maybe you and I and other people in the church can read a book together. Wouldn't that be fun? I think it'd be great, because when we read together, we're reminded of God's goodness to us. He's a God who reveals himself to us in a book.